The frozen wilderness of Alaska is filled with abandoned cabins, forgotten mining camps, and places where nature has erased almost every trace of human life. But among the locals of a remote valley called Frost Hollow, there's one place they refuse to speak about after sunset. An old wooden cabin stands alone, miles away from the nearest road, surrounded by towering spruce trees and endless snowfields. No one has lived there for over 50 years, yet every winter, a warm yellow light appears inside the cabin. People have reported seeing silhouettes standing behind the windows, quietly watching anyone who passes by. Some believe the cabin is haunted. Others believe something far worse never left. In December 2024, Daniel Harris, a 31-year-old travel filmmaker and paranormal explorer, traveled across Alaska searching for forgotten places with dark histories. His YouTube channel had become popular because he never used fake jump scares or staged hauntings. He believed every mystery had a logical explanation, until he reached Frost Hollow. The nearest village was nearly 30 miles away. When Daniel stopped for fuel, the elderly station owner looked at the map and immediately recognized where he was heading. His face turned pale. "You shouldn't stay there after dark," Daniel smiled. "I've heard that before." The old man shook his head. "No, you haven't heard this." He leaned closer. "If you see lights inside the cabin, don't go in. If someone knocks from inside, don't answer. And if a little girl asks you to stay," the old man's voice trembled, "run." Daniel laughed politely, thanked him, and drove away. He never imagined those would be the last normal words he would hear. Snow covered the road as he drove deeper into the wilderness. The GPS lost its signal. Phone service disappeared. By late afternoon, the cabin finally emerged through the falling snow. It looked even older than the photographs. Broken windows, collapsed porch, rotting walls. A rusted lantern still hung beside the front door, gently swaying despite the complete absence of wind. Everything around the cabin was buried beneath thick snow. Everything, except for a narrow trail of footprints leading toward the front door. Fresh footprints. Daniel frowned. Someone had been there recently. But there were no footprints leading away, only toward the cabin. The front door slowly creaked open with almost no effort. Inside, the air was strangely warm. The smell of mold mixed with something metallic, like old blood. Dust covered every surface. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. On one wall hung dozens of family photographs. Every single face had been scratched away, except for one. A little girl with braided blonde hair. She couldn't have been older than 8. For some reason, her picture looked almost new. Daniel felt uncomfortable. Still. He continued filming. As night fell, the temperature outside dropped below -30 degrees. The wind screamed through the forest. Daniel set up cameras in every room. Infrared cameras, motion sensors, audio recorders, everything was working perfectly. At exactly 9:17 p.m., every clock inside the cabin stopped. At the same second, his wristwatch, his phone, his camera timer, even the digital thermometer froze. Time itself seemed to stand still. Then, a soft laugh echoed upstairs. The problem was, the staircase had collapsed decades earlier. There was no way anyone could reach the second floor, yet footsteps slowly crossed the ceiling. 1, 2, 3. Heavy footsteps, as if someone was dragging frozen feet across old wooden boards. Daniel pointed his flashlight upward. Nothing. The footsteps stopped instantly. Then, his camera suddenly focused on something behind him. Daniel turned around. Nobody. When he reviewed the footage seconds later, a little girl was standing only 6 feet behind him. She wasn't there when he looked, but the camera captured her perfectly. Pale skin, long blonde hair, black eyes, bare feet stained with blood. She smiled, then disappeared. Daniel's heartbeat accelerated. For the first time in years, he felt genuine fear. Around midnight, every lantern inside the abandoned cabin burst into life. Warm yellow flames illuminated every room. No electricity, no fuel. Yet every light burned brightly. Outside, the snowstorm suddenly stopped. Silence swallowed the forest. Absolute silence. Not even the wind remained. Daniel stepped onto the porch. The forest looked frozen in time. Then, he noticed movement. Dozens of people stood between the trees. Men, women, children. None of them moved. None of them blinked. They simply watched him, standing perfectly still, half buried in snow. Daniel raised his camera. The moment he zoomed in, every figure vanished, except one, the little girl. She stood only 20 feet away, looking directly at him. She slowly raised one hand and whispered, "Come home." Daniel backed away into the cabin and slammed the door shut. His breathing became heavier. Then, knocking. 3 slow knocks, not on the front door, on the bedroom door upstairs, the upstairs that no one could reach. The knocking continued for nearly 10 minutes. Then it stopped. Silence returned. Daniel convinced himself it was the wind. Until he looked down, fresh wet footprints appeared across the dusty floor. Tiny footprints, a child's. They ended directly behind him. He turned around, nothing. But his camera microphone recorded a whisper beside his ear. "You looked." At 2:43 a.m., his motion sensors activated simultaneously. Every room detected movement. Every room, including rooms where no cameras existed anymore. Daniel watched the monitor. Every camera showed someone standing just outside its frame. Never fully visible, always waiting, always watching. Then every screen turned black. One by one, only one camera remained active. The camera pointed toward the family photographs. The little girl's portrait was gone. The empty frame slowly filled with a reflection. Daniel's reflection. Standing inside the picture. Behind him, 12 smiling figures. Terrified, Daniel grabbed his equipment and ran outside. His truck was exactly where he had parked it, or so he thought. When he reached it, the truck was completely frozen beneath years of snow and ice. Trees had grown around its tires. Rust covered every door. It looked abandoned for decades, impossible. He had arrived only hours earlier. Then he heard the little girl's voice. "You've been here much longer than you think." Daniel turned. The cabin lights went dark. Every window filled with silent faces, dozens, maybe hundreds, all staring, waiting, smiling. The following morning, a search team found Daniel's cameras scattered across the snow. His truck was still parked nearby, perfectly normal. No rust, no ice, no sign that decades had passed. Daniel himself was never found. Police searched the surrounding forest for weeks. Nothing. Only his memory cards remained. Investigators later reviewed the footage. The final recording lasted exactly 6 seconds. Daniel was standing inside the cabin, looking directly into the camera. Behind him stood the little girl. She gently placed one hand on his shoulder, then smiled. The recording ended. No glitches, no interference, just silence. Local historians later uncovered forgotten records from 1973. During one of Alaska's worst winter storms, the Harper family became trapped inside Frost Hollow cabin. Rescue teams arrived nearly 3 weeks later. Every family member had died from mysterious causes. Every member, except their youngest daughter, Emily Harper. Her body was never found. The official report blamed the blizzard. The locals never believed it, because every winter since then, travelers still report seeing a little girl standing beside the cabin, waving at passing vehicles. Some who stop to help are never seen again. Others return home, unable to remember where they have been. But they all share one strange detail. Late at night, someone knocks 3 times on their bedroom door, and from the darkness comes the same innocent whisper. Will you stay with us tonight?